You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. Yeah, you're playing cards.
Mr. President.
You're playing cards.
Serious.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
It's now been over a year since that downright embarrassing exchange in the Oval Office, which occurred just a month into President Trump's second term. Today, Ukraine still fighting against Russia's full-scale invasion, a conflict that President Trump said repeatedly that he'd have settled on his first day in office. That moment at the White House foreshadowed a complete overhaul of U.S. foreign policy, from imposing tariffs on our allies to making threats to take over Greenland to following through on threats in Venezuela and now Iran, with Cuba put on notice to be next. Joining us now, former Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, Rick Stengel. He has a new essay for The Guardian titled, "I Was the U.S. Soft Power Czar. Our reputation may never recover from this." Also with us for this conversation, retired four-star Army General Barry McCaffrey. He is an MS Now military analyst in general. We'll come to you in a minute or two about the latest on the war in Iran. But Rick, we're going to start with your piece. In it, you write this: "Our allies and our adversaries have long been confounded by the eternal seesaw of American presidential politics, where conservatives are replaced by liberals who are replaced by conservatives, and on and on. The assumption of the Biden administration was that Trump was the authoritarian anomaly, bookended by two liberal internationalists. It turns out that Biden may be the aberration. Since Woodrow Wilson, American presidents have been in the democracy promotion business. That era may now be over. With the war on Iran, U.S. action in Venezuela, and increasingly bellicose talk about Cuba, the Trump administration is reviving the old trope of the ugly American. That old image of America as a narcissistic and culturally insensitive bully is back with a vengeance." And Rick is spot on. I mean, first of all, we have disbanded some of our soft power with our Voice of America and other efforts, relief aid around the world that engendered goodwill for the U.S. Gone. We've stopped doing that. And talk about this piece about how hard it will be, you believe, to recover, because, Republican or Democrat, presidents used to sort of at least sound the notes of, we're doing this for democracy, we're doing this for human rights. President Trump doesn't even bother.
Yes. I mean, even that ugly American trope was accompanied by, paeans to democracy, to saying you should be transparent and open. That's why we're helping you. And I mean, just watching that video, I felt, PTSD. But I mean, Trump himself has become the paradigmatic ugly American. But he's the ugly American without any kind of talking about democracy or talking about, free speech or any of these values which were part of American soft power. So soft power is not about military hardware or economics. It's about culture. It's about ideas. And those ideas, free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, equality, all of those things were part of America's soft power. And now when people look at Trump, they think, well, he doesn't believe this. The people who work with him don't believe it. I mean, why should I support America? Why should I visit America? And remember, all of these things are part of our economy. Tourism, higher education. That is because people looked at us as a kind of shining city on the hill. Maybe we weren't that, but they still wanted to come here. And that is all going away. Tourism is down. Foreign students are down. As you mentioned, all of the kind of U.S. global media is gone, and U.S. foreign aid is gone.
Yeah, and General McCaffrey, I mean, this applies directly to what we're seeing in Iran. First of all, the President Trump has alienated our allies, so they're not part of this. And in fact, he's made noise about trying to leave NATO because Europe won't help with the Strait of Hormuz. But also in the war's first hours, the president did say that he was trying to help the Iranian people, that he was hoping that the U.S. conflict would free them. Well, that rhetoric has been tossed aside. And now, if he follows through on his threats to destroy Iran's electrical infrastructure and more, well, it's the people of Iran, even more than the regime, it's the people of Iran who will suffer.
Well, look, you get backing off the issue on legality of certain kinds of strikes, and will we go after Kharg Island, which would be a huge mistake. I think what crystallized my thinking on the danger the country is in was the unhinged tweet on Truth Social from the president, blasphemous on Easter Day. It sounded like sundowner syndrome on an elderly man. Had that statement been made by a lieutenant colonel in an email to his boss in the Pentagon, literally, we would have let him out of the building and sent him over to Walter Reed. So we got a problem. I don't see how we get through 2 more years with the commander-in-chief. There's only 2 people that can give legal orders to the armed forces, the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense. And both of them are shaky figures. So we got a real problem. Now, how we're going to get out of this dilemma with Iran is beyond me. Tactically, the air-sea campaign has been the most successful in military history. Simply phenomenal. We actually do have air superiority, dominance throughout this giant country of 90 million people. But strategically, we're in a box right now, and President Trump is desperate. It's obvious. He's flailing. The Iranians are not bluffing. And so we're in a considerable difficulty. We're not going to get their nuke program under control with air attacks. We're not going to change a regime with air attacks. We're not going to open the Strait of Hormuz with air attacks. So the country's leadership doesn't know what it's doing. Where's the denunciation of this in Congress?
Yeah, and Rick, of course, Congress silent, conveniently on recess. But let's talk. That deadline looms. The president pushed it today. It's tomorrow night. And people around him have said that he's serious. Like he's considering this. He may give the go-ahead for this attack. There are some last-ditch efforts at negotiations right now. You, of course, have plenty of experience with these sorts of talks. Do you see any sort of off-ramp here?
I don't know. And, part of what he's doing, and General McCaffrey knows this phrase, is sort of escalation dominance in terms of rhetoric. It's like, I can say hell more times than you can. I can be blasphemous more times than you can. And obviously he has backed down many times. But part of this rhetoric, this ugly, violent rhetoric, is this image of the ugly American. That's exactly what people see when they see someone who's not democratic, who's not going to Congress, who's making these really ugly threats. It's really nasty. I hope he doesn't go through with it, because basically he's threatening, civilian crimes and crimes against international law. That only makes that image of the ugly American even more venal.
And one that would potentially create a wrecked, failed state that would be a breeding ground for terrorism and that much more anger towards the United States. So, General McCaffrey, we've learned that the former Army Chief of Staff, ousted last week by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, sent a farewell letter to his colleagues following his dismissal. In an email shared with MS Now by a defense official, General Randy George reflected on his nearly 4 decades of service and thanked fellow Army leaders for their support. He also emphasized that service members deserve tough training and courageous leaders of character. Defense Secretary Hegseth removed George along with 2 other Army generals last Thursday as part of a broader shakeup of military leadership. Since taking the helm at the Pentagon, Hegseth has removed more than a dozen senior military leaders. General, we want to get your thoughts.
Well, look, the Chief Staff of the Army, Randy George, enlisted guy, West Point graduate, 2 master's degrees, Purple Heart, wounded in combat, multiple combat tours. What the country needs to understand is the armed forces are a training machine. I'm a run-of-the-mill 4-star general retired. I had 6 years of postgraduate training. So Hegseth and the president have fired over 20 senior officers. And this generation of leadership, generals and admirals, have been more experienced than anyone since World War II. So it's a real detriment to the national security of the country. It's hard to tell where all this is going. There's a certain amount of chaos and desperation inside the Pentagon over the civilian leadership. So I think we're in trouble. It's unsettling. It's hard to know where all this is going. And we do have a war going on with a brigade of the 82nd Airborne now standing by in the Middle East and 2 Marine battalions to apparently conduct combat operations to open the Strait of Hormuz. A very shaky, perilous situation for the armed forces.
Yeah, that can't be overstated. Those assets are already in place. The Pentagon has presented Trump options. They're just waiting for his go-ahead. Retired 4-star Army General Barry McCaffrey and former Undersecretary of State Rick Stengel, our thanks to you both. That was a terrific conversation. And we